Hello, Mary's here. I'm glad you can make it. Today I have a teaching I would like to teach about the bride of Christ. And I have this first one will be a history lesson on the bride of Christ. And it will be the literal application. And we're going to find it first in the Torah, in the first 5 books of the Bible. And we're going to start with Balaam. In Numbers 23, Balaam was going to curse Israel, God's bride. And he went to the top of the hill and the top of the rocks in 23 verse 9. But what he saw was from the hills, behold, I behold him. I see him. He saw Christ, and he was on top of the hill looking at Israel. In Numbers 24, verse 2, it says, And Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he saw Israel abiding in his tents according to their tribes. And when in Numbers 24, verse 4, it says, he saw the vision of the Almighty falling into a trance. The vision of the Almighty. And he's on top of the hill, and he's looking down. And he's looking at the structure of how they camped around the sanctuary. And it was the vision of the Almighty. Numbers 24, verse 4. So we're going to go to the literal, starting there first. In Numbers chapter 2, it's going to tell you what Balaam saw. Numbers 2, verse 3 through 9 talks about the east side of the sanctuary. And it's where we have Judah, who's the captain of the east side, Issachar, and Zebulun. Numbers 2, verse 3 through 9, and how they camped on the east side. And Judah was the captain of those 3 tribes. In Numbers 2, 10 through 14, we have the south side with Reuben, Simeon, and in verse 14, it's the tribe of Gad on the south side. And Reuben was the captain of those armies, of those children of Israel, of the bride of Christ on the south side. Verses 15 through 24 is those that camped. Verses 18 to 24, is those that camped on the west side. And Ephraim is the captain of those 3 tribes. So it's Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. In Numbers 2, verse 25 through 31, it talks about the tribes on the north side. And it's Dan, it's Asher. In verse 29, it's Naphtali. And that's how they camped around Israel. And Balaam in Numbers 24, verse 4, says it was the vision of the Almighty. And when we, the bride of Christ, is together in unity, camping around the Father and the Son, the sanctuary, because that's what the sanctuary was, a place that he could dwell among his people. In Exodus 25, verse 8, is that he may dwell among us. He saw Christ. And the bride is so precious that in Song of Solomon, she is described as, who is she that looketh forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army with banners. Solomon 6, verse 10. They had an army with flags, an army with banners. And when you notice back in Numbers 2, they had the standard of the camp of Dan, the standard of the camp of Ephraim, the standard of the camp of Reuben and of Judah. And those standards on those flags that they had were consider them like a mascot. They had, on the east side was the mascot of a lion, which was quite reasonable. Judah, the lion in the tribe of Judah, they picked as their mascot. They had banners of a lion. South side was the man. That was on the south side for their banner, on their standard of their camp. The east side, the west side was an ox or calf. It was the sacrifice on the west side. And on the south side was an eagle. But in Solomon describing the bride of Christ, it says, "Who is she that looketh forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army with banners?" And I noticed there was like a sister verse to that in Matthew 13, verse 43. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. And who is she that goeth forth as the morning, clear as the sun? The righteous shall shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. And that's the bride of Christ. And then in Matthew 13, where this verse is, it's talking about a parable of the wheat and the tares. Verse 40 of Matthew 13 is, it shall be at the end of this world. And 43, then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. And I thought that was fun, that God's church, the righteous, will shine forth as the sun at the end of this world. The field is the world where the tares are sown among the righteous. And at the end of the world, the righteous will win, only through God's grace. But when you go to verse 44 of Matthew 13:44, there's another parable there of, again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto treasure hid in a field, the which when a man hath found, he hideth, and for joy therefore thereof goeth and selleth all he had and buyeth that field. And these are qualities of the bride, but it's also the qualities of the groom, because he did this for us. He thought that we were the treasure hid in the field. In the field, the world is the field. And he went to find that sheep, and he took it to himself, and for the joy of goeth and selleth all that he had. He put everything he had into it, just like we need to put our lives into it and give Christ everything that we have, and he buyeth that field. Christ bought us. He redeemed us, and he did that. The kingdom of heaven is like unto treasure hid in a field, the righteous among the tares, and which when God finds us, doesn't he protect us and hide us in his hand? And for the joy of goeth forth and selleth all that he hath. Didn't he sell all he had by dying on that cross? He bought that field. He bought that bride with his blood. And that's what I see on the bride of Christ. We are his treasure, the apple of his eye. Thanks for coming.